Okay, great. We're live here for the Donor Management Best Practices webinar. We're so happy you guys could join us today. We hope that your January season of 2024 is off to a great start. And if you're joining us today and you're interested in donor management and you're working in the donor management related field, and what is it, January the 11th, I think, 2024. This is probably difficult timing for you to even be here in this webinar. I'm sure you're dealing with a ton of donor management related services for year end. So God bless you guys for doing what you do. But with that being said, let's dive into it today. What we want to do today with this webinar is talk a little bit about how donor management services are changing. We want to talk a little bit about what that means to us, what some of the benefits of those changes might look like. Of course, we always want to talk about how the Site Stacker, kind of universe can help our partners manage those changes and get great gains from those changes. So we have a lot to talk about today. I'm sharing my screen here. If you're tuned in and you're looking at the screen, remember, at the end of the webinar today, we are going to do a raffle, as we always do, for some delicious Old Florida Coffee Co. coffee. It's a micro roastery that my family owns right here in Fort Pierce, Florida, in the old 1882 PP Cobb historic downtown building here in Fort Pierce. And it's a local favorite, and we're glad to be sending out a care package of some fresh roasted beans and some other goodies to the person who wins the raffle. Will do that at the end of the session. So hang in there, stick with us, and good to see you guys online. I see all of your chat comments coming in, so let's get started. All right, well, as we think about donor management, it's kind of the first big thing is what is it? And of course, if you think about it systematically, you might just be thinking about that from the perspective of just kind of CRM or record management or gift management or something like that. But of course, we know that it's a lot bigger than that. But I wanted to start just kind of from a real specific kind of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 7-point list of if you're a nonprofit organization that receives donations in order to fund the work that you're out doing. You need a good donor management system, and there's a minimum of 7 things that a good donor management system has to be able, to do for you. All right, so we'll just run through this list, and this is nothing, revolutionary, but let's just run through the list. It's just kind of a starter. So the first thing is you have to be able to take at this stage in the game all of the online gifts. And when we talk about online, we're talking about the gifts from your credit card or ACH type gifts, probably mostly coming in from your website. But we certainly work with organizations that they might have a website, they might have some other system that they're using for some kind of peer-to-peer, giving or fundraising. They've got all these dynamics of ways that the gifts are coming in. But basically what we're talking about with online is that the donor is processing the gift for themselves. So let's just put it that way. The donor, you've given the donor the ability to find something that they want to give to in relationship to the work your organization is doing, and they are able to process that gift for themselves. And so offline, we're going to similarly qualify that is kind of the old school, let's just think of it simply as the donor sends in a gift by a check through the mail. Maybe there's a cash gift somehow from a meeting or a church visit, but whatever the case is, it's the donor gives you the check or they give you the cash, but then your organization has to kind of do the processing and the data management for the gift. Your donor management system needs to be able to give you a way to get all of that stuff online and offline all into one place, in a reasonable way, and to reconcile that and to verify, okay, we got 150 checks last week. Have they cleared the bank? Is the money in the bank? We received, 340 online donations. Is the money in the bank? So we need to be able to do that. Another thing that we need to be able to do with a good donor management system is we need to be able to report income. Basically, I refer to a donor management system as the income system of record for a for a nonprofit. And so why is the donor management system the income system of record, even more so than the accounting system? Well, if you think about it, the donor management system is going to have the most detail about income. So all of the income, donor related income, should be in the organization, should be in the donor management system as it relates to the organization. But this is where we are going to have the detail about what was given to. You might have source or appeal code type of information about how it came to be that gift was given. You're going to have who gave it, on what date, how they gave it, check, credit card. You're going to have basically all of the most granular detail as it relates to that gift. And so now most organizations, once you push that to the accounting system, you're probably pushing it as summarized data. Maybe you're pushing it as transactional data, but a lot of times you're pushing it as summarized data. Maybe if you have 5 different campaigns that you use to raise funds for one single general ledger accounting code, okay? The donor management system will know how much came in by each campaign, but the accounting system will really only know in the end what came in for the accounting code overall. So because the donor management system really is the income system of record, you need a way to be able to get granular access to the reports and the information related to what happened with income. This is going to be the system you'll use for that, and it has to be able to do that. You're going to need to be able to create and manage marketing lists. So in other words, a lot of times, I know we don't necessarily like to use the term marketing, but really at the end of the day, what you're really trying to do is understand what the affinity of your donors are, right, or is, right? So in other words, you're trying to understand that if we have this major project to go to some part of the world and do this major thing, we're trying to figure out within the list of donors who have already engaged with us, who shares that affinity, who is interested in that work that we're going to do, and might be blessed by the opportunity to know about it and to partner with us and to give to it. And so how are we going to know that? Well, it's going to be based on past intelligence. It's going to be based by looking back at information on the donors that we've already had, and coming up with lists of probable donors who might have an interest in partnering with us in specific things. Have to be able to do that. The next thing, obviously, we need to, if this is our income system of record, then this is where the most granular information is going to be about the income we've received, and that income has come namely from donors. And so this is where this system is where we will receipt from. It's where we will provision our giving statements by household and so forth. Have to be able to do that. A lot of the organizations we work with work heavily on the basis of sponsorship or pledges, or you might think of that also as missionary support. But basically, the two really big ones would be missionary support and sponsorship. And so we've had to create SiteStacker as a system that excels in those two areas. Because for missionaries, obviously, as they raise their support, they're always going to have a list of supporters who have pledged or who have committed to support them monthly or quarterly in some way. And of course, the missionary needs to know whether that pledge is being fulfilled. They need to know whether their supporters are on track with their support. It's also true for child sponsorship that many of the organizations we work with have child sponsorship programs where a person comes along and sponsors a specific child, and there's typically a specific amount of money that they promise to donate in relationship to the sponsorship of that child. And so you have to be able to track those things and to know who is supporting who and who is sponsoring who, and whether those sponsorships and those pledges are being fulfilled. Another thing you have to be able to do is manage offline giving batches. We still have checks coming in the mail and gifts that are coming in offline, and we need to get those systematically entered so that they can be part of the business office's reporting and data management process. And then the seventh thing is we need to easily be able to move income data in and out of the accounting system. So again, nothing revolutionary. You have to be able to do these things, but these are the minimum things that you have to be able to do. Now, in order to do these things, here is what the environment previously, kind of looked like for us as nonprofits using donor management systems. Is first of all, the blue box all the way over here on the left, data input. Now let's think of that in relationship to gifts and donors. For a lot of, let's take a missionary sending agency as an example. Let's say you had 250, missionaries out in the field, and each missionary has, well, let's just make this easy, 100 supporters. And so we're expecting something around 2,500 different gifts to come in, each month in support of those missionaries. In the past, the vast majority of those gifts came in through the mail. You open a check or open up an envelope, you pull out a check. There's a check in there with the missionary's account code on it. And then you have to take that and get it input into the system. And so you have data entry clerks, and it's all manual. Opening the envelope, preparing the checks for deposit, depositing the checks into the bank, entering the gift into the donor management system, all manual, right? And so most of the organizations that we've worked with as a starting point or a reference point, historically, that's been about between, I would say, and this is not a firm number, but I'm going to say that that's been about 75, even as high as 85% of all their income. That's the way they've been processing it. And so there might be some that it's more like 60%, but the vast majority of the income has been this manual process. And then you get it into the donor management system. Why? Because that's going to be where all of the intelligence is. Well, now that all that information is in the donor management system, that's where we are going to do other business office processes, all manual. We're going to reconcile. Okay, well, we know we've got the check. We know we deposited the check. We know that the check is now in the donor management system, but did the check clear the bank? We're going to reconcile. And then eventually, once all that information is stored in the donor management system, we have to get it out. And we have some form of data output. So in the past, the way that has always really traditionally looked for most organizations is what we call reports. And everyone's kind of talks about their reports, right? And so you might have had folks on your staff that are spending tremendous amount of time over the course of the years building these different reports. But what were the reports actually for? Why do we have these reports? And the answer to that is that we have members of our staff ultimately that need to do something, right? And they need this information in order to go do what they need to do. And so I've broken that here, as you can see, down into two kind of segments. They need to either access data or they need to do something, take some action in relationship to the information of the donor management system. But again, that's all manual. So like to give you an example of that is, let's say let's say to follow through on the missionary support model, let's say you have a missionary out in the field and so they've raised their funds, they've got their support team in place, they've gone out to the field. And so in the past, they might have had to come back to the back office and go, hey, listen, could you give me some kind of a report or an update on whether my supporters are fulfilling their pledges? And then the folks in the back office would have to create a report that spit that information out of there. Oftentimes they'd need to export that report out into some kind of a spreadsheet and then maybe they need to redact something, or they need to change the visualization of the report. And then eventually they would manually manipulate that information so that they could send it in an email or something and shoot that over to the missionary. All of that is manual processes, right? But the bottom line is that you have this missionary in the field that needs information to what's in that green circle right there. And how are they going to get access to that information? Well, donor management systems in the past have traditionally been very bad at this because they're kind of back office, on-premise, closed door systems where a very limited number of people have access to the data that's in the system. And so it becomes a very arduous manual process to get that data out and get it into the hands of the people who need it. Another example of that is that maybe you have an executive who is trying to decide, okay, do we expand the work in North Africa? Or if we expand the work in North Africa, are we going to do more water wells or more church planting or more radio ministry, whatever it is that we're doing? And we need certain information or data out of this green bubble, this donor management system, in order to make a good decision on those things. And so we're going to come back to the back office and go, listen, we're trying to decide what we should do in North Africa. Can you give me a report that gives me the income information about all of these projects from North Africa in the past? And they're going to be looking for analytics that they can pull out of that system to analyze where they should where the opportunity might be. Again, it's going to be all a manual process of someone having to create that report and so forth. So you get the idea is that in the past, this is the way the landscape, has always looked. And this is the way this donor management system serves us. And then this is kind of what we need out of it. But it's very painful to get the information in. And it's very painful to get the information out. And it's very painful to get the information out to the hands of the people who need it and make decisions from it. Well, what does the new world look like? Well, the concept here is that online giving is going to be the first thing that changes this dynamic. What we're seeing right now, in fact, we just did the analytics on a client that is a fairly large organization. They're just under $100 million a year. And when we started working with them, like a lot of our clients, that over 80%, they're a child sponsorship organization, this particular client. And so over 80%, as I understand it, of all of their giving when we started working with them was coming through the mail, was coming in through offline batch entry. Okay. And in child sponsorship, that's a big deal because you're generally talking about sponsors who are sponsoring a child at something like $39 a month. So you're talking about thousands upon thousands upon thousands of gifts having to be manually hand keyed or entered into the system. And so you need a big team to do that. That client now, I think they're going into their 4th year on the SiteStacker platform. We just did the analytics. They are now at 93% online. All right, what does that mean? Well, it means a lot of things, but two of the big key things it's going to mean is a lot of the error that was going on with the data input is now gone. That error is gone. Why is that a big deal? Well, because if you're keying everything in manually, you're going to make mistakes. Okay, so what do you do to try to not make the mistakes? You put in all kinds of safeguards where someone keys it in, someone checks it. You use some kind of a note-taking system in there, some kind of a flagging system. Your donor management system becomes completely bloated with all of these features. And why do you have these features? Well, primarily to try to deal with the fact that when you're entering thousands of granular records, you're going to make mistakes, and then someone has to catch those mistakes. Same thing on reports on the other end. You're going to have a bunch of reports that people use to try to hold one thing up against another and see if all the keying and the keying entries, if the mistakes can be found, right? So it's a big deal. Well, if you're at 80+% of all of that income coming in, $39 at a time by line item every month, if that moves to 93% of being online over the course of 48 months, the landscape of what donor management means to you, what it takes to do donor management, the kind of features you would need to do donor management, it all changes because every one of those online gifts is fully automated. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a few minutes. But that's a really, really big deal. Is the very first thing we want to do is flip that around so that the vast majority of all the inputs are automated so that we can reduce obviously the time and the labor, that we can also reduce the error. The next thing that we can do is we can allocate now business intelligence dashboards so that the same system, namely in this case SiteStacker, that handles your online giving, that handles your offline giving, is the same system that provisions all of the business intelligence that your missionaries, your field staff, your church planners, whatever it is you're doing, distributed around the globe. The same system is going to automatically provision all of the intelligence out to those staff members in those remote locations and those missionaries, so that they don't have to come back and get that information from the business office. That's the next thing that we would do. And then the next thing we would do is we would use in SiteStacker the Spark and the Motion 2 automation tools to automate the vast majority of the actions. Now think about what I'm saying here. Is in the past, what you would need to do is, like, say that you were someone who's a relationship manager or a marketing manager. What you might need to do is go, okay, can you give me a report from giving last month? Because I need to figure out who gets these emails that we're going to send out, this email campaign that we're going to send out, based on who gave what to what and how much they gave and so much like that, right? That's a very typical thing where we're going to get a segmented report, and the action is we're going to do some communication from that. But it's all manual. So we've got to build the report. We've got to garner from the report the intelligence we need so that we can go over into whatever the communication tool that we're going to use. We can build the communication, and then we can manually segment the list, maybe in a spreadsheet. There's all this work going into that. Well, in the new world, what we do is we take the outcome we were looking for. Like we're doing this campaign for year end. If someone gives more than $300 to this campaign, we would like them to get a special video message from the president of the organization. Okay, great. So in the past, you were going to do that through a report and all this manual effort. Now you're just going to go in, create a Spark automation that goes, when someone gives to this campaign more than $300, send them this email message that links to this video, and it all happens automatically. Then you can just go back in and go, wow, okay, that it looks like through the automated segmentation tags that Spark put on that list, looks like 1,098 donors received that communication, but it's all automated. And so what happens is that we go from 100% of the work that we're trying to do being manual input, manual business routines, manual data output, manual distribution of data, manual actions that we take to market and build communication routines as a result of what happened. All of that can be automated, and we can get to a really true scenario where about 85% of the stuff we were doing all this manual work with can be automated. And that's really kind of like where we need to go with this. All right, so let's talk about that. First of all, we're not really going to get into all of the automations that make all of that happen. If you want to go back and recap, we've done a number of webinars that you might find very interesting. One that I did was a 10-year recap with analytics about how increasing your online giving and improving the automation with it can increase giving results and accomplish some of these things. We're not going to get into all that today. So we're going to assume that we understand that now that we've gotten into SiteStacker and we're getting into a world where 85% of what we used to do manually is starting to be automated. What I wanted to focus on today are some best practices of how we can take the 15% of the stuff we're still manually doing. And for some of you, you may not be at 85-15 yet. You may be, you're working in that direction. The organization I just talked about, they went from 80 to 93. There's another missionary sending agency, fairly large missions agency, that reported that over a 36-month period of time, they went from 25% of all their gifts being automated online to now with SiteStacker, 36 months later, they're at 75%. So they've flipped the script, right? But you're somewhere in that process if you're on SiteStacker. Maybe you started at 30-70 and now you're at 40-60 or 50-50 or whatever, but you're working in a direction. All right. But even so, let's talk about the stuff that will continue to be manual and how we can now take that and make that even more efficient and do even more to streamline that part, that red circle, the 15% of manual. Okay. And so, the way I wanted to kind of talk about this is Easter eggs that are in SiteStacker. In other words, features that are in SiteStacker that you may or may not even know are there, or that you may or may not have been using, that I think can be an incredible benefit to you in terms of saving you time and reducing the errors in some of the batch entry and the manual tasks that you have to do in SiteStacker. So let's talk about this. So the first screen I wanted to show you is we're in batch entry. This is a little known Easter egg, but in batch entry, in the lead in, if you're not familiar with the system, don't worry about that. But the lead into here is what's happening is that I've received checks in the mail. I've deposited the checks, or I've prepared the checks for deposit. And now I'm going to sit down and I'm keying in all of the gifts from those checks. Okay. Now let's just say that one of those checks that comes in, someone's written a check and they have, 5 different donations, 5 different designations in the one check. So maybe it's a check for several $1,000s and they go I want to give $500 to the general fund, and I want to give $700 to this other project. And they have 5 different designations. And so in the old world, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to have to key in all 5 of those, search for the fund and key it all in. This is a really cool little feature in the SiteStacker batch entry tool, is that let's say I found the donor's name, I put it in, I put their check number in, I put the amount in, and then I open up the designation selection screen. And right here, you can see I can check to view past historic transactions. And it's going to give me all the past historic transactions this donor has ever given. And what's cool about this is oftentimes donors give repetitively. So I've got all of the designations that they've ever made. I've got all of the past transactions that have ever been recorded for them. And then I can take one of those transactions and just push the over button. And in this case, this transaction with 5 designations, I just press that over button, and SiteStacker automatically pushes all of those data entries in a blink of an eye. So that's going to save me, let's say if I'm entering 300 checks, that's potentially going to save me hours of time, which is tremendous. So that's a really cool little feature there that will save you a ton of time, and it will also save you a lot of the possible error. Because if you're keying in all these amounts one by one, or if you're selecting each of these designations one by one, obviously that exposes us to the possibility that I select the wrong thing or I key in the wrong amount, etc. Here's a screen view of this to where, all right, so yeah, so now what we want to look at now is here. If you're watching this play out, I've gone into batches, contributions, batches. I've created a new batch, and now what's happening is I've got a new check I'm entering, and I'm going to go into the designations area, and again, I'm going to find that transaction, push it over. So this is just a video that we're using to recap what I just told you. And let's watch that again really quick. I go into batches, I open the batch, and you'd probably already be in the batch. But let's say I just got this check out in front of me, Carlos Escobar. Okay, I type his name in, I find his record. There it is. Okay, I'm going to key in the amount of the check. I'll click the little disc to manage the designations. Now here I could key in all the designations, but since it's a repetitive gift, I just hit the over button, and within just a couple of seconds, what could have been a long, arduous process happened very quickly. That's a super cool feature. Now, if that happens a lot, like say Carlos, as it turns out, he never told us he was making a pledge, okay? He never said he was going to do that gift every month, or at least we didn't know about that. But I start to notice that he does do that every month. That just like clockwork, that Carlos sends this gift in, and it's the same gift over and over again. All right. The next really cool feature we have, and this is true whether we know about it or not, is that, I mean, in other words, the donor might send in a gift and go, I'm making a pledge, or I am going to support this missionary, or I am sponsoring this child, whatever it might look like. And I plan to do this every single month. Or you might just notice that they do. But either way, you could create an offline recurring schedule for them. And what's really cool is once you create an offline recurring schedule, then when you're keying in this check that you've received, instead of even doing what I just showed you, you would just simply browse right here in the dropdown for an associated offline recurring schedule. Pick the schedule that's associated with the gift of the check that's on hand, select it, and literally in a split second, in this case, you can see 5 campaign designations are entered in. The totals are all summed up, and you don't have to key anything in. In fact, you don't really even have to look at it. All right. So here I'm showing you what that looks like. All right. You just drop it down, click it, verify it, and boom, that's it. So all of the campaign designations related to that recurring schedule are automatically keyed in, and you just add the gift and move on to the next gift in the batch. So this saves you a tremendous amount of time. Now, you might also ask, what happens if I key this in for this donor, and then every once in a while, instead of sending $50, he sends 100. That's no problem. If you notice right here, we're in the video that's showing, if you click this, okay, just like we're clicking it now, verify it, okay, and then open up the campaign window, you can change the amount right there, or hit the plus button and add other designations. The other thing that you'll notice is that right to the right of selecting that associated recurring schedule, you can click partial offline recurring, and you can notate that you're receiving only part of the expected gift. So that's a really cool feature there. All right. Another thing that I think is really cool is once you have an offline recurring schedule set up like that, and again, remember, an offline recurring schedule is something that you'd want to have if someone is sending a check in every month to support a missionary or to sponsor a child or something like that. And so this is a really cool feature where now that we have this offline recurring gift set up for Carlos, one of the questions that might come up during research is like, I want to make sure that the gift has been coming in, that Carlos has been sending the gift. And what I did right here is I opened up Carlos's record right from the batch entry screen. And in this case, you can also do it from CRM. So I look for Carlos's record. I'm going to open up his donor record. Okay. And then I'm going to go right into the giving tab. And then I'm going to go to the recurring view because I've got all these gifts he's made, but which ones are associated with that recurring schedule? I'm going to right click on the recurring schedule, and I'm going to click view associated transactions. And now I'll see every gift that Carlos has ever given in relationship to that specific recurring schedule. So it's just another really cool little Easter egg that will help you with your research and help you also to see if those gifts are being fulfilled. Now, another really cool feature is this, is of course you can create a recurring giving schedule right from the contributions, recurring tab. But did you know, and this video is showing this, did you know that as you're entering your batch, okay, and imagine this, the check comes in, I'm entering my batch, and up comes the next check to enter, and it comes with a pledge, fulfillment card or a child sponsorship card, whatever it is that might come in the mail with that check that allows that sponsor that donor to say, I'm going to give monthly to this, as an example. Okay. So I've got that pledge. So I'm like, okay, I need to enter this check I've received, but I also need to enter an offline recurring gift. Well, you can do it in line without losing your way. Now watch how cool this is that all we did is we clicked the little disc next to the drop down. Now look, this is really cool, is if this donor, like in the case of Carlos, has been repetitively giving this already, all you have to do is find the repetitive donation and push it over and save. And you've literally created a recurring pledge-based schedule in about 15 seconds and 3 clicks. Or you can enter in the pledge by keying it in, either way. But from that point on, now every time that gift comes in, all you have to do is make the selection. You don't have to key anything in. So again, it's going to reduce error and it's going to speed everything up. All right. Now, with that being said, let's talk about how we can automate access and outcomes. And so, and I see a lot of questions coming in. So we're going to tackle some questions here in just a little bit. But now that we've kind of went through some kind of cool little scenarios of ways we can ease the data entry, let's talk about automating access and outcomes. All right, so here, one of the things that I think is really cool is on the customer service side of things. Let's say that we have an online donor who gave online using their credit card, and they want to give again, but they're on the road driving to the airport. And so, and it's the end of the year. I'm just throwing out a crazy scenario. So they call you guys up and they go, hey, listen, I made a gift last year about this time, and they give you the details, and I'd like to give that gift again. Can you help me? Sure, absolutely. So all we're going to do is I'm going to come into the search tab. I'm going to search for the donor. Okay, I've got their name, put the name in. Looks like they gave a lot, but I'm going to put in the amount that they're saying they gave. I'm going to identify the gift, verify that's the gift, right click on it, and you've got this cool little Easter egg, give again. Click that, and the entire gift with all of its designations is automatically rebuilt with almost no work. Now you're just going to verify which of the credit cards you already have on file from him, because when he gave online, the credit cards, the ACH accounts are all now available for you to grab and use from customer service. Now think about how cool that is, that you're going to be able to help him do that. You're going to be able to process that gift without keying anything in with your right hand. You don't really have to hardly type anything in, and you're going to be able to process that gift in just a few minutes. Just a really cool feature that can be really handy. Let me give you another cool thing, a little known feature that's really cool. So in the past, online giving didn't really help organizations as much as it should have. And one of the reasons why is because the online giving was always somewhere other than the donor management system. So even to this day, a lot of the new clients that onboard with SiteStacker, that's their situation, is that they have this online giving system, and then every week or every month, they've got to try to export all the gifts out of the online giving system and somehow some of them are still typing them into the donor management system, or import them, or somehow get them into the donor management system. And then comes the next big piece, is that in reality, you've got several dynamics going on. A, you've got this donor management system that is telling you received these credit card gifts. B, you have the bank that actually processes the credit card gifts in the background. And every once in a while, some of the gifts that were processed don't clear the bank, right? And so now you've got a real weird thing where you've imported or keyed in these online gifts from your online giving system. You've put them into your donor management system, but in reality, they never make it to your bank. Well, this has been a nightmare for a lot of clients who've come out of that world, because they're constantly trying to figure out ways how to reconcile that. Did you know in SiteStacker that that's automated when you use our partner Nelnet Payment Services? And this screen right here, we're in the transaction view, and what you're seeing is the pink lines are credit card gifts that didn't go through, they failed. But the ones that are clear did go through. See, success and failed, okay? And so, but did you know that if a credit card transaction or an ACH transaction originally succeeds, but then later Nelnet Payment Services is not able to get that gift to transact, and so it doesn't clear your bank, that they automatically send that back to SiteStacker, and SiteStacker automatically does a reversal of that gift. And did you know, and I'll get into this in a second, that that reversal will automatically go into your export to accounting so that you literally don't have to do any work with that. That's kind of a little known feature that is super, super handy, because you really don't have to do anything manual anymore to figure out whether the credit card or ACH gifts have made it to your bank. And here I'm going to show you the next stage of that is when you go into like your Nelnet Payment Services dashboard, it will show you all of the gifts that went into your bank by batch. So every day they pretty much process a batch of SiteStacker gifts that transacted, and that batch goes, the money from that batch goes into your bank. And then they're going to give you a batch code. So here we are kind of showing the SiteStacker dashboard, where you're going to be able to go in, see if I can get this to play. There we go. You're going to be able to go in, and in this case, this one is configured for Sage Intacct. But you're going to be able to go in to this dashboard, and you'll be able to put in a batch code. Now that could be a batch code for offline gifts, or it can be a batch code for online gifts. Okay. And so if it's a batch code for online gifts, you'll put that in. And what happens is when Nelnet Payment Services processes the batch and puts all the money in your bank, they provision a batch code, and they automatically bring that batch code back and put it into the transaction record in SiteStacker. Therefore, if an online gift has a batch code, you already know for a fact that the money from that gift is in your bank. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So what's really cool about that is you get a batch from Nelnet, you put the code in SiteStacker, okay? You export that batch, and it's already verified without you doing any manual work at all that the money from that batch is in your bank. So whatever it is you were doing, the many hours of trying to reconcile all that kind of stuff before, all wiped out, all gone. It's fully automated now. You don't have to worry about that. It's done. All right. Now, what happens if you incidentally export a gift out to accounting, and then later on you find out it didn't clear the bank? Well, that's where it will automatically be reversed in SiteStacker without any manual activity, and it will show up in your next export, and the reversal will go straight into accounting, and everything will square. So again, fully automated. Now, another cool thing about this, if I can show you, is in SiteStacker, if let's say that you're going to export a manual batch. So I'm going to take this manual batch code, put it in, and then here are all the gifts for my manual batch. All right. So then I'm going to use the total at the bottom to reconcile with the bank. Okay. From this batch that correlates with the deposit I made, I'm going to pull that deposit up with my bank dashboard. I'm going to verify that $758.98 cleared the bank from that deposit. Okay. If that's the case, I'm good to go. If less cleared the bank, then I'm going to look for the transaction or the check that failed. I'm going to go into my SiteStacker dashboard and do a reversal, and then I'll come in and I'll export my batch. Now, once I've reconciled just like that, and I export the batch to CSV, SiteStacker will automatically lock these transactions so that they can no longer be edited. That way, you never have a misalignment between what SiteStacker says the record is and what is in your accounting system. You go, well, wait a minute. What if after I've exported the gift, I need to edit it? No problem. All you're going to do is go in, do a reversal on the locked gift, and just create a new gift record with the new amount. And then both the reversal and the new gift record are going to come into your export account, and it will go directly into accounting, and everything is square. All right, so now with that being said, I've got a couple of questions before I go on related to this. And so, and one of the ones that I just got from Elena, thanks for joining us today, was how does this work with other payment processors other than Nelnet? And that's a great question, Elena. So it works more manually. Essentially, one of the reasons that we love Nelnet and they're a really great partner for us is they're the only payment processor that we know of that has been able or willing to provision this level of automation back to SiteStacker for the convenience of our clients. Now, with that being said, what you'll have to do is, since other payment processors will not come back and push automated reversals, you'll actually have to go into your payment processor dashboard, find gifts that didn't clear the bank, and then you'll have to come back into SiteStacker, look them up by their gift ID, which will be there, and then you'll have to right-click on that gift and do a reversal of that gift. And so, and I love your comment too, that you love them too, and you just wish that they would do Canadian, and that's right. So one thing payment that Nelnet doesn't do is Canadian. So if you're receiving gifts in other currencies, there are some features you'll get for your US currency that will have to require more manual processes for your other currencies. And that's kind of a bummer, but there's no way around that right now. So those are really good questions. And but we're thankful for the vast majority of the income records. This has been an automated process that really works. All right, so let's see if we can get to the next part here. And so, all right, the next thing I wanted to point out is one of the things that you can really make these kind of batch entry processes more efficient is by actually mapping out your process and figuring out where you might be able to use automation to accomplish some of the things that are supposed to happen down the road. Let me give you some examples of this. So this would be an example of a batch gift processing workflow. And so maybe an organization goes, okay, well, we're gonna have a couple of people open the mail, they're gonna stamp all the checks and get them ready for a batch entry and deposit, okay? And then now, see if I can do this without, okay. So, and so now we're going to go in, we're gonna create a new batch, we're gonna enter that batch into SiteStacker, and for each new sponsorship or pledge, we're gonna create an offline recurring schedule, just like we just talked about. Now, let's see if I can stop messing this up. Okay, so then what's really cool is we can automate on the basis of adding that schedule that you can add maybe relationship changes and record types. So for instance, let's just say that you created a recurring schedule for the support of a missionary, and ideally you'd want to add a relationship between the donor and the missionary of supporter of and supported by. And so that way the new donor, the new person supporting them, can show right up on a missionary business intelligence dashboard. Well, guess what? You don't have to manually add that relationship. You just go into Spark. You create a Spark automation that basically says when a recurring schedule is created, where a donor makes a gift and the missionary is the receiving person, apply this relationship to the donor and the missionary. And then you can also automate adding record type tags, where you could add a record type tag to the donor that says missionary supporter, or a current supporter or something like that, whatever you want to do for segmentation purposes. The other thing you can do is, let's say later on, that supporter stops sending in the gift and several months go by and no gifts are being received, and they're supposed to, and maybe everyone's trying to communicate with them and they drop off the radar, and essentially you have to cancel the gift. Well, you can automate the relationship changes there. In fact, you can automate the cancellation. You could go into Spark and go, if someone has an offline recurring gift or an online recurring gift, either way, it doesn't matter, and that gift is not funded for 3 months in a row, you can automate canceling that gift. And then you can automate other things. You could say, if they miss giving to that gift this month, send the missionary email and say, hey, listen, your Uncle Bob, didn't give this month. Okay. Or you can automate other things like that. You can also automate then ultimately canceling it, where it cancels the gift. And then once the gift is canceled, you can automate emailing the missionary and go, hey, listen, just so you know, this pledge of sponsorship or whatever of support has been canceled. They haven't been giving. And so none of that has to happen by surprise. The back office doesn't have to do any manual work. All right. And what's cool is you can chart this out and go, this is kind of what we want to happen. Sorry that I keep jumping around here, but this is kind of what we want to happen, is that not only do we want to enter these gifts, but we have these outcomes that need to happen later on. Like missionaries need to be notified of things. Child sponsors need to be notified of things. Communication needs to happen. Action steps by account managers needs to happen. This kind of stuff can all be automated. All right, so let's say that we've come in and we've created our batch. We've keyed in all, the red boxes here. We've kind of keyed in all of the checks and everything. And then the blue boxes, zooming in here isn't working well for me, but all of the blue boxes, it really isn't, man, I'm sorry. Let me zoom back out. The old rule, if it can go wrong, it will. And there, it just went wrong. So you guys caught that. All right. So anyway, so the blue boxes would be then all of the review process and so forth in the submission. But now imagine that you had other outcomes. Like, let's say that you had a donor manager that they're like, hey, listen, anytime we get a new donor that gives to one of these campaigns in a certain amount, like over $500, I'd really like to give them a personal phone call, and do some relationship management. And so we're going to provision the donor manager with a dashboard, and then we are going to be able to go in and basically go, here's what we want that donor manager to be able to do. We'll chart that out. 1, 2, 3. We want the donor manager to be able to make a phone call, put some notes on the account, whatever it is we want them to do. And then we can go into Motion 2, create a little automated workflow that and use a Spark automation that goes, if a gift comes in on this account more than $500, assign this Motion 2 automated workflow to the donor manager. And then the first task of that workflow is going to automatically pop up on the donor manager's dashboard. And all of that stuff happens automatically without anyone having to do any manual work, which is super cool. All right. So, okay. Sam asked, is there any documentation available on how to set up the auto canceling of unfunded recurrings? There is. In our SiteStacker.training, there should be documentation on Spark and Spark automated outcomes. That's one of the Spark automated outcomes. If you have any trouble finding that documentation, Sam, just go into the chat bubble, ask our support team, this is what I'm looking for, and they'll guide you in the right direction. We'll help you find that. But yeah, there is documentation for that. So thanks for asking that. All right. So this is a really helpful thing to do, though. Just go into, the product we use is something called FigJam, but just map out the process and then go, hey, here's a certain place where we could automate some things, map it all out. And then if you're like, hey, we need some help automating that, come to us, we'll help you do it. So as you think about automation, then to make these outcomes happen, you can think about using Spark on the other side of maybe your manual entry processes to manage relationships like we just talked about, to manage adding or removing segmentation tags. And then once you've added or removed those segmentation tags automatically, you can then automate pushing those segmentation tags out as list tags into MailChimp, so that you can automate both drip communication in SiteStacker and bulk communication in MailChimp. You can use Spark to kick off Motion 2 workflows where you want folks on your team to take action and do certain things and work certain tasks as a result of pre-thought through outcomes. I mean, let me give you one of the examples of this. We all the way back in the beginning of the talk, we talked about using reports as a way for like maybe a marketing team to figure out who gets a communication message. Well, now let's just automate that. Let's just use Spark to go, hey, listen, whatever it is you were going to search for in that report, like if someone gave within a certain range or a certain time frame or to a certain thing, let's just put that criteria into Spark, create the message we were going to send them, and let Spark send it automatically. So instead of digging for that information manually after the fact, just let it run. It saves time, it saves communication lapse, and it works better. We can use Spark to publish or unpublish articles, and there's a lot of kind of cool aspects around that go onto the website so that we can actually kind of do some website content management stuff based on what activity that actually happens with donors, which is really, really cool. We can cancel unfunded recurring schedules like we talked about. We can notify admins of things that happen. So there's all these cool things we can do with Spark that are really going to help us. Let's talk about some other things. Let's talk about business intelligence and creating and using dashboards to automate the way our team, and one of the things about the partners and the clients we serve is our teams are distributed all over the world a lot of times. And so one of the real difficulties, quite frankly, is access to relevant information going out and coming back in. And so how can we use dashboards to do that? What we're looking at right here is a donor management or maybe a donor account related dashboard where we're able to go in, search for donors based on criteria. It could be based on gift ranges, gift amounts, time periods, segmentation tags, and then we can view that on a map. Super handy. Let's say if I'm going to be traveling and I want to see if I can set some lunch dates or some dinner dates with donors, I'm able to go in on the map, see who's kind of around the area where I'm going to be, pull up their record right from there. Super handy feature. Let's look at some of the reports. I mean, right here, we're looking at the revenue overview. Now look at up at the top of that report. The purple versus the green. One of the cool things about putting in, recurring gifts both offline and online is that it's going to essentially allow us to do projections. Like, so if you have an offline recurring gift where someone says, I'm going to give, $500 a month to this project, then we can project that we should be receiving $500 a month toward that project. And then we can compare that to what we actually received, which is super handy. So the more that things become automated and the more that we begin to think in this way, the better we can project what our income is, the better we can balance out our income. So we can use now dashboards. And what you're seeing here are snapshots of data visualization. A lot of you may not have some of this on your dashboards. There's some really cool new features for dashboards and reports that have come out where we can work with you to figure out how you want to visualize your data, how your executives, how your missionaries may want to view their data related to income and giving. And then we can help you visualize that on the dashboards, which is super handy. And again, what that really does is going back to the problem we're trying to solve here is, remember, all this stuff was manual. And then as a result of that, taking action on the information that's in our donor management system and getting that information out to missionaries, field workers, executives, people that need it in order to do what they do with our organization has traditionally been very limited. Now, as we automate, as we provision these business intelligence dashboards, as we use Spark and Motion to actually do the actions that people used to have to try to do, we can get to this point of complete and total efficiency. Less error, faster turnarounds, squeeze the air out of the pockets in our processes, get better results faster. And it's a tremendous way to operate. All right, so with that being said, let's move down to Q&A. And we want to look at some of the questions that have kind of come in and see if we can answer. So One of the questions David had was whether SiteStacker can track. It says SiteStacker can track income, but is there a way to track how much you expense to a campaign and reconcile income to expense? So yes, there is, David, and that's a really good question. SiteStacker is not an expense management platform. However, we do have a really powerful tool that we call Historic Giving, where we keep both income related and expense related finalized data. So if you want to have expenses, we recommend you manage your expenses in your accounting system. So you're not managing your expenses in SiteStacker, like the data entry of expenses. When a check goes out, that should be in your accounting system, right? But what we can do is we can then take the expenses from your accounting system, bring them back into Historic Giving, and then we can take that expense information and we can provision it on business intelligence dashboards out to the people who need it. And a good example of that is for fundraising missionaries, where we oftentimes are able then to not only show them from SiteStacker what the income is for their account, but we can also show them their full account balance, because we're bringing that expense data back from the accounting system. So they're going to be able to see during a date range, see their beginning balance, their ending balance, and what all of their income and expenses are as is from the general ledger. So that's a great question. We do have a way to do that. If you have more questions about it, get with our team. Our team can connect with you, walk you through all of that, show you what the options are. It's really powerful and you can do a lot with it. So Sandy, you asked, how do you see who is behind in the recurring schedule without going to each individual? And so that's a really good question. And what you can actually do is I don't have it open here, or else I would show you, but you can actually go into contributions in the recurring giving tab, and you can simply just find the schedule that you want to track and look at it there. The other thing you can do is you can actually go to the reports section of your dashboard. When I say look at there, you can find the schedule, right click on it, and view related transactions right from there. And it will show you all the transactions that have come in against that particular recurring schedule. With that being said, you can also go to the report on the dashboard that shows you the recurring gift performance for a certain date range. And you can see all of the recurring schedules, and it shows you every single recurring gift. You can look at it by date range. It shows you projected versus actual, and it shows you how much was supposed to come in for that recurring gift and how much actually came in during that date range. And then that would be the first step, in my opinion, in identifying, like, I've got these recurring gifts offline and online that are supposed to receive a certain amount of income in, but then I can identify the ones that didn't. Okay, all right. So is there a way, I'll do one more here. Is there a way to create an email or any kind of reminder to alert us to an offline gift? We have donors that donate semi-annual and yearly. And yes, there is. There absolutely is. You can essentially create a recurring schedule for donors, offline recurring schedule that is semi-annual or annual in its recurrence. So if you're expecting a donor to give, $5,000 every December around the 15th, then you can put a recurring schedule in that shows that that's what the expectation is. And then you can automate that if a certain amount of time lapses and that gift isn't received, that can send the donor a notification. You can automate that it sends you a notification. You can also automate that it kicks off a small, maybe a motion to task workflow, where you get a task right on your dashboard that basically says, hey, you may want to give this the donor a call. They typically give $15,000 at this time of year, and we haven't received it yet. All things that you can automate and do in SiteStacker, which is pretty cool. All right. With that being said, I think we're out of time. This has been a lot to think about and go over. We want to do our raffle for some Old Florida coffee, and we're going to go ahead and spin the wheel of names. We thank all of you for attending today. And wow, is it going to be Maria or Jason? Jason Campbell. Congratulations, Jason. We're glad to be sending you. You'll be receiving an email from our team to get your address. As soon as we get your address, Jason, we're going to send you an Old Florida Coffee Co. gift pack. And we thank all of you for attending. We do have some other webinars coming up over the next few weeks. We hope to see you there. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks for joining.